Welcome everyone. My name is Malcolm Ross, Vice President of Product for Appian, and this is the Appian 18.3 Product Announcement Webinar. I'd like to welcome everyone. In today's session, we're going to learn about all the new features, capabilities for end user, designer, administrator features coming out with the Appian 18.3 release. If you're unfamiliar with the Appian release cycle, to start with, I'd like to remind you that we've had two releases already this year, 18.1 and 18.2. This will be the 18.3 release, and subsequently we will have an 18.4 release around that mid-November timeframe. So look forward to a product announcement webinar around that late October, early November timeframe for that 18.4 announcement. And of course, with that, each release builds off the subsequent capabilities of the previous release. So it's always important to have context to what came out in 18.1 and 18.2. If you missed those product announcement webinars, of course, all the webinars are available on community.appian.com or the Appian YouTube channel. So feel free to view those at your leisure from those sources. With that, of course, we're going to talk about 18.3. And as a reminder, 18.3 is scheduled for GA release on August 24th, 2018. In this session, we're going to cover the end user, designer, and administrator features included with 18.3. So let's kick off right into the end user capabilities. And the first one is actually something I get to announce today, actually available right now rather than August 24th, and that is going to be Appian's new native mobile UI capabilities. For those who've been using the Appian native mobile application, you might be familiar with it. It's obviously available from the Apple App Store, as well as the Google Android Play Store. And of course, you can download this to get a native mobile experience with enhanced capabilities, more responsive capabilities also than the web UI. But of course, those of you who might have been familiar with a numerous number of Sail UI layouts and components coming out over the past year might have been familiar that some of those components have not been supported on the mobile device form factor inside the native mobile rendering. Now with 18.3 and available right now from the Apple App Store as well as the Google Android Play Store, you can download this and start working with these new UI and layouts. So this includes, of course, full parity with the web for rich styling capabilities, such as multi-column, card layout, billboard layout, box layout, all those layout controls you might have been enjoying from the 18.2, 18.1, 17.4 release and subsequent releases are now fully available inside the native mobile application container. So again, available now, feel free to take advantage of that. But let's actually take a look at this in action, see what these new native mobile UI capabilities look like. So I'm going to swipe over, take a look at, say, some of my examples here, filter into an interface, and let's actually go to a site rather. I'm going to go to my Tempo experience here. So let's go to Tempo. From Tempo, I'm going to navigate to my example site around my Rainy Day Insurance Corporation demo. And we'll see a few UIs that I mocked up here myself. The first one is going to be a nice demonstration of using the multi-column layout controls to center information, have multiple columns, as well as the card layout control. Of course, the card layout, if you didn't see that, came out in 18.2. And the card layout is exactly this, where I can define these boxed areas to highlight certain text. I have full hexadecimal color code control over those boxes. And of course, as well, I can make those entire boxes clickable to make really intuitive custom button actions inside the entire UI. So this is using some advanced styling capabilities, as well as rich text styling at the top, as well as some nice button controls in the middle. And that bottom footer is actually a billboard layout control. So instead of putting the billboard at the top, putting it at the bottom and using that billboard as basically a footer descriptor, kind of give a little bit more emphasis to that page. Now let's take a look at this and what it might look like in the mobile form factor. So I'm going to swipe over, and now you see a screenshot or actually a live view of my iPhone device. You'll see that the card layout is going to be fully supported. The clickable actions and the cards are also fully supported inside the environment, and it also brought forward that footer of the billboard layout control. So all those controls are going to be brought forward. And of course, we're going to automatically restyle those to fit into the form factor of the specific native mobile application device. So here I'm going to reduce that multi-column layout to that single column layout as we see here. Let's take a look at another example. In my coverage tab here, I just mocked up a certain page. It's going to show the billboard layout control with a lot of rich text styling, as well as embedded images, embedded Google Maps inside of here. So this is using the web content component that was also released in 18.2. So I can have some rich text controls or rich embedded UI controls from third-party services. Of course, charts, graphs, and other types of column controls. Swipe back over, take a look at that inside my mobile experience, and right away you'll see that that billboard layout's been preserved. It really looks nice still, preserves that background image of the beach, but of course I had more content, so I can scroll up and down inside that billboard layout to actually see all the content that was available inside the web UI. So I scroll down, of course, I can see again that multi-column layout's been reduced down to that single column. If I do have any information that goes to the left or right, I have that side scroll on individual grids, or a side scroll, say, on charts if I need to see the full information around these. Now, as well, I can also see that link control to the Google Maps is preserved, but instead of embedding it, that is going to be embedded in in an embedded web browser. So I simply click on that action. It's going to take me to that current position map from Google Maps. So again, look forward to everyone taking advantage of this. If you'd like to try it yourself, again, you can go to the Apple App Store right now, download the latest Appian mobile application, and use that across your web environments that you've had rich text styling, and you'll see that new behavior instantly take effect. In addition to the new updated mobile capabilities, we've also added a new sail component. This is the document viewer sail component, which allows you to embed documents from the Appian document management store, such as things like PDFs, SVG, GIFs, text, and XML documents. So of course, this is a new sail UI component, such as the document viewer field component, and it takes in a single custom parameter, which is simply the document I want to embed. As a reminder, this does allow you to embed Appian documents from the Appian document management store. So it will not embed things, say, from a SharePoint or other environment. If you would like to embed content from other environments, we encourage you to use the web content component, which then allows you to do similar actions to embed content from those third-party sources. So in here, though, you'll see that it's simply a viewer. So it is going to allow me to view PDFs, images. It is going to use the native viewing capabilities of the web browser. So it's not a specific kind of viewer object inside of there. It's just going to be the web browser viewer embedded inside the overall sail page, as we see in this demonstration in the bottom right. Now, as a reminder, though, some older web browsers, specifically Microsoft Internet Explorer 11, does not allow embedding of certain images or certain objects, such as PDFs. If you embed a PDF and you're using IE 11, that's going to prompt to download the PDF instead of embed it. That's simply a limitation of the old web browsers and the type of embedding behavior we're using. But of course, all the other web browsers should support that nicely for embedding all these specific object types. You'll also notice that it is going to be limited to mostly the object types that you see right here: PDF, SVG, GIF, text, XML. Of course, you have more advanced things like Microsoft Word docs, Excel docs. Again, that won't be natively embeddable, as well as HTML to prevent any types of introduction of cross-site scripting attacks or conflicts with the CSS. We're going to not allow embedding of HTML via the document viewer component. But of course, if you want to embed HTML, you do have the option of using the web content component, which does in a slightly different fashion of how we're going to embed that. In addition, we also updated our notifications capability to add notifications configurations from Tempo and Sites for end users. So this allows for individual end users to control their notification settings for both email and mobile push notifications. In addition, we've actually added a new capability on mobile push notifications to allow for news push notifications. So if we want to see this in action, we'll go ahead and swipe over. We're inside a site right now, so to access this, I'm going to simply go up to my configuration and go to Settings. From the Settings menu, your users are going to see two new tabs here. One is going to be Email Notifications. Of course, you can do a universal turn off for this individual user simply by turning off tasks like that or turning off news like this. Or I can get to the more granular controls. If I can see high-level controls like send me an email whenever a task activity occurs, or maybe show detailed task settings when a task is assigned to me, or social tasks have been closed or updated. So again, encourage you to notify your end users that do have this enhanced capability, control notifications, as well as notifications on news capabilities. And as I mentioned, new to Appian 18.3 is push notifications on news events. So inside of here, I can simply enable that just like this. And of course, I can enable, say, any news-related items that occurs to me, go ahead and check everything, or maybe just I want important news or selected news. Going to kind of configure some pre-configured sub-elements by choosing these high-level categories. Make it very simple. If I want to hide those details, I can just hide the details and choose the high-level ones, important news. Of course, important news is going to give you that just updates around things that were specifically sent to me rather than just things on behalf of other people. So look forward to, again, that more granular control by your end users for push notifications on mobile, as well as general email and mobile notifications. In addition, with 18.3, we've added a new site width control feature for those ultra-wide monitors people have been buying. So you might have seen these on the market. You might own one yourself. No longer is 16:9 ratio popular. Now you can buy a 21:9 and sometimes even greater ultra-wide monitor screen. I've had some customers who've had agent desktop experiences who really require that ultra-wide experience. So we've added a new site control called full, which is going to take away that left and right hand margin from the wide. So if you happen to have a 21:9 aspect ratio monitor and you use the wide setting for your page layout on the site, you'll notice that even though it's set to wide, it still has some padding there on the left and right when it goes to this ultra wide format. So now inside the site's configuration, you have a new configuration called full. And when you set it to full, this is what that page is going to look like. It's going to take away that left-right margin and really fill up the entire screen with all your content, making a better accommodation for that, again, ultra-wide monitors. If you have a regular 16:9 monitor, you're really not going to notice any difference. Wide and full will pretty much appear the same, but on the ultra-wide, you will see that difference. In addition, for additional layout controls, we've added a new margin configuration on all layouts. This includes the box layout, section layout, billboard layout, side-by-side, card layout, and columns layout control. You'll see a new parameter called margin below, and that is defaulted to none. Why we defaulted none is to preserve existing behavior. So obviously those current layouts did not have any margin padding at the bottom of the individual layouts. So we want to preserve that existing behavior, but of course now you can go in there and configure it to standard, and when I have standard, it'll add just a little bit of padding there, as you can see on the right-hand side, to give a little bit more delineation between the individual layout controls. Of course, up to you on your styling preferences, whether you like everything tightly packed or a nice padding, simply configure that in the margin below parameter. In addition, we also added custom colors for box layout controls. So custom colors for box layout is the same similar custom color control we have for things like the billboard layout control, the card layout control, and other areas where you can specify hexadecimal color codes. So in this, I simply select the box layout I'll configure. You can see that there's a new option to say use custom color, configure the style to be the hexadecimal code. Now, if you're on a Mac computer like myself, you'll see that you get that color wheel pop up inside the drag and drop interface designer. And of course, in the Windows computer, you'll see a slightly different color control that is depending on the operating system control that allows you to have that color selector. And of course, you can also simply paste in the hexadecimal code directly to control that color. In addition, we've also added a shortcuts for date and date time component. So what this means is for those of you who use a pure keyboard interaction with the Appian interface, you now have an option to automatically set the date for the date and date time component to the current date. To navigate to this, as you tab between the individual fields, when you arrive at a date or date time component, you hit the arrow down button to access the calendar control. Once in the calendar control, you can hit the T button, and the T button will automatically set it to current date. As well as on a Windows computer, you can hit the delete key to automatically clear out the entire field, or hit function delete on a Mac computer to similarly clear out that entire field. And that's it for end user experiences for Appian 18.3. We're going to move on to the design time experience now. And the very first designer experience is, of course, around diffing of individual objects. So this simply allows you to select any expression editor or interface design object inside the environment. So this only applies currently to expression editor and interface design. And from here, you can see the version history, as you can with all design objects. And then from the version history, you'll see that there's a new control there to compare any version to the latest version inside the environment. Once you click on that control, you'll get a nice diff view between the two environments. So here we can see that diff view popping up. And now you see a nice difference between the A and B between the two systems. Let's take a look at this in more detail. So if I go into my design example, let's go to, say, my engine maintenance task example. This is the one with that document viewer component inside of it. So I can see that viewer component pop up just like this. And of course, if I want to see my version history, go ahead and go to versions just like this. From my versions control, I can now see all the different versions of my individual UI. And let's say I want to compare version 6 to the current version. Simply select this, and now I have a nice visual comparison between the two versions. You'll see that this not only compares the logic, but all the different settings, such as the name. As you saw in 18.2, you can now also rename the rules across the entire system. So if the name did change, we'll highlight any name change. Description, whether the interface was made available for offline or not. The individual rule inputs, as well as the definition itself. So here in highlighted in red, I can see things that were deleted. Highlighted in green, I can see things that were added. So very clearly giving me line numbers and controls that show me exactly what changed between the two versions. And then finally, at the very bottom, I see that this is also available for test values. So test values are those pre-saved test scenarios. And again, I can see any changes to the test values through time as well. And as a reminder, this does only apply to the expression editor and interface designer object. If you're keen to predict what's coming out in later releases, you can probably detect a theme here that will be trying to extend diff to other areas as well in the future. Now next we have Interface Designer also with a NavTree updates. So this simply first allows you to hover over any navigation item, and we highlight the component in the visual design experience. This makes navigation in the NavTree much easier, so I can visually see exactly what's being highlighted when I select it inside the navigation tree, as we see on the right hand side. I'm selecting things in pink, and on the left hand side I can see exactly the controls that are being configured when I select that from the navigation tree. In addition, we've also reduced what's shown down to the level of only things you can move around. You'll find this is a little bit more intuitive inside the interface navigation tree. So we don't no longer show extraneous, say like conditional statements or things that aren't primary design objects that cannot be moved around unless they specifically apply to high-level conditions. So here you have like one if condition, which is going to control maybe specific parameters in what kind of content I'm going to show. That does need to be shown, but maybe sub configurations do not need to be shown in the nav tree, and therefore we're going to condense that and not show as much information, making it easier to navigate. In addition, we have a new interface designer searching for components. So as we build out a very large library now of Sail UI controls, you can now search for those in the top hand menu. Simply type in the name of the object I want to find, in this case date. Once I select it, simply drag and drop and place in the location I wish. So again, much easier to navigate that very growing library of different UI controls you have available to you inside the interface designer. And finally, with Interface Designer, we've also simplified button controls. So the submission button object has been removed. Now, this does not mean it does not exist. If you've built anything with what's called a bang button widget submit, that is still an object inside the overall expression language. So that will continue to work. You do not need to go refactor all your pages. They will work with no problem. But simply we've added a parameter to the button widget control. I believe that was actually already there, so it's a little bit redundant to the button widget submit control. And that parameter simply says submit : true or false. So I can tell it, yes, I do want to submit this if the person clicks on it, submitting the form that is, or false, I do not want them to submit the form. Because this was redundant with the submit button widget control, we've removed the submit button widget control just to make it a little bit more intuitive design. You no longer need to, say, discern between the two button objects. And similarly, on the mobile experience that we saw before, inside the Interface Designer, we also have an updated mobile preview. The updated mobile preview accurately shows you exactly what was expected inside the native mobile UI rendering. So this is important that it's going to maintain that styling control. So if you had a card layout, multi-column layout, box layout, all those will also preview nicely inside the Interface Designer from the Interface Designer preview view, as well as, if you remember from 18.1, we released two new functions. One is called isNativePhone, and the other one is isNativeTablet. Those specific functions are going to be used to do mobile first design for specific form factors. So if I want to show information specifically because it's on the phone or specifically because it's on the tablet, I would use, say, a show when condition isNativePhone to display certain objects or not display those objects. So again, if we take a look at this inside the Interface Designer, if you missed the 18.2 release, of course, pretty significant updates there on the Interface Designer. Really encourage you to go back and revisit that release video if you missed that. But essentially, it's a full drag and drop experience now for building things, adding things inside the environment like this. Much more intuitive design than we had inside the 18.1, an earlier release. So what I was talking about, though, and specifically in this case, let's go to that insurance pricing page example that we had before. And inside the insurance pricing page example, again, I have that edit view. The edit view is going to show me these specific areas where I could drop information into. But if I want to see a more accurate rendering, I'm going to go to the preview view. The preview view, of course, is going to give me an accurate preview of what the user would see for a web rendering. But while in the preview view, I can also see those additional controls right here to say preview for tablet. As I select tablet, now I see a rendering of that on the tablet device with a nice layout on the card and exactly how it would look like on the native mobile experience. And then I can also click on the phone, giving me a phone rendering as well with kind of accurate estimates to where the scroll points would be as well inside the environment. So again, if you haven't experienced the 18.2 Interface Designer, again, encourage you to either try it out on an Appian free trial or upgrade to 18.2, or simply check out the recording of the 18.2 product announcement webinar on YouTube or community.appian.com. In addition, we've also improved the performance analysis and troubleshooting to add new performance metrics on save evaluations, as well as preserving interface context and the latest evaluation when there's a retest performed. So we're going to make sure we persist that information, making sure that we don't clear out all the test information or performance details. Now, going back to specifically on save metrics are the actions occur that when I want to save an interaction to a backend system. So if you might be familiar with this as a parameter called save into, and inside save into, I can have an array of save actions. Those save actions might simply update a local variable, or they might actually write to an external data store or submit a form or do some type of action behind the scenes. Now, since those write transactions are also important to debug and analyze performance-wise, when I perform some save actions like I'm doing right now in this form, and then click on Performance View, I can then see that save metrics analysis, which is going to give me a detailed breakdown, just like the evaluation metrics of how the performance performed on those write actions to write information from the interface. In addition, in the general Appian Designer, we also now remember search and filter parameters inside the Appian Designer when you navigate away from it. So if I'm inside the Appian Designer and I type in a search string, here the example is case order, and I want to search just for interfaces, and then I click away, so I click on users, monitoring, applications, then come back to objects, it will persist that search. So simply a nice little usability feature to preserve those search parameters as I'm working inside the overall design experience. And also with Appian Designer, we also added environment info to the import and export log files. So when I perform an import or export action, as you may be familiar, it generates a log text file. That log text file tells you the specific objects that were imported. Now inside that import and export file, it's going to add to there a site name. So if it's your site name like Appian Production, Appian Development, Appian Test, that'll be logged there, as well as the specific server domain name that that import or export action occurred from. In addition, the process modeler now opens up in new tabs. So what do I mean by new tab? A little confusing because we have lots of tabs going on. You have browser tabs, and then inside the process modeler, I have tabs specifically for the process designer. Now, inside Chrome and Safari now, when I click on a process model, it will detect which browser tab already has the process modeler window open and open up that model inside a new tab inside the process modeler. So if we want to see this behavior, actually, let's just go ahead and demonstrate this very quickly. Let's see if I have a few process models to maybe demo from. I have two. Let's go ahead and say my export Excel process model. Now I have that opened up in a new tab inside this tab. As I open up the complete vehicle service, I see now that opened up in a new tab like this. So again, it's going to recognize that this is the process modeler window and then open those up in new tabs. If you do have a limitation, though, of up to 10 tabs inside the process modeler, if I try to open an 11th one, it will give me a little warning message saying, you cannot open this, please close some of the other tabs before opening up that 11th tab. And again, this behavior is simply updated for Chrome and Safari. This is how the behavior worked correctly on Microsoft Edge, IE 11, and Firefox. Also, we've added a little updates to better to improve record type design or record object design. Simply, as you've configured a record type possibly before, you notice it's a long configuration page. You're configuring the properties, data source, filters, the list view, the record views, the related actions, the process models. Now we've made this a little bit easier to navigate by allowing you to easily consolidate each one of those areas so you can more quickly navigate to specific areas of the environment. And also specifically in record type design, we've also added expression back record improvements. Specifically, we've now have separate expressions for the list view and record view. So you don't need to consolidate this into a single expression object. You now have separate window panes for defining the record view as well as the list view for an expression back record in Appian. And in addition to expression back records, there's a new variable that complements the RSP bang query variable, which is RSP bang search text, RSP bang paging info, and RSP bang filters. When you're building an expression back record, you often need to reference these in multiple places, such as the search text is obviously going to give me the specific search string that was applied by end user and how I want to apply that into a filter. As well as the paging info is going to be how many objects to retrieve, and the filters I specifically want to apply as well. To make that more portable across other areas inside the entire record type design, you don't have to redefine those functions. Simply define RSP bang filters, you define it once, and then I can fetch that value in other areas of the product, such as in this case, like the list view source expression. Other areas you might want to apply it inside the environment. And also we apply automatic filter optimization. So this is specifically for multi-select filters where you might have multiple equal comparisons. So if I have, let's say a multi-select filter and the items are 1, 2, 3, and it's say equals 1, equals 2, or equals 3, then we're going to combine that into an in operator. Why we do that automatically is simply optimize the performance of the backend. So instead of evaluating multiple conditions, it'll evaluate a single condition to see if my value is inside any of those multiple selected items. We've also made group type enhancements, and the group types we now may be more easily applied in rules as they are supported as constants, rule inputs, process variables, and activity class parameters. So as I define in this example, constant, I can make that constant of group type, and now I can reference that group type in other areas to maybe drive dynamic business rules across the system. Of course, well, what is a function that takes in group type? Well, glad you asked. Let's talk about the native people functions now inside the Appian product. The people functions plugin happens to be one of the most popular plugins inside the entire Appian application marketplace. So since it's so popular, we decided to not have you worry about downloading some of those plugin functions. They're now simply part of the Appian product. The two that have been incorporated inside the Appian product are the ABANG groups by name and ABANG groups by type, which is specifically now I see, this is why we have group type as a rule input. So by passing it a group type, I can see all the groups of that type, get an array of those groups. And simply also I can say groups by name if I have maybe a specific prefix or postfix or specific name search string I want to apply. I can look for that specific object by name and fetch it, and then maybe apply a get distinct members or is member user group, other types of people functions that are already inside the Appian product. So again, the two most popular functions inside the people functions plugin was these two, groups by name and groups by type. So those are now natively part of the Appian product. There are still about 14 or so other people functions inside the plugin. So you might not be able to fully replace the plugin just yet, but for those two purposes of groups by name and groups by type, you can use the native functions now. In addition, we've also introduced a new native function for Swiss francs. So this allows you to format a number value in the common format for Swiss francs. So this is very similar in behavior to the dollar function or the euro function. The Swiss franc function simply takes in a number, how many decibels I want. So 2, 3, 4, so level of detail. Now, Swiss francs are measured in or have apostrophes for delineation, not commas. So no apostrophes, true or false. And then show prefix symbol. The prefix symbol for Swiss francs is CHF. So here you can see an example on the right-hand side where I actually apply the prefix symbol. And right here you see CHF 1,234.56, where I format that into a nice Swiss franc text string. In addition to group type support and data type parameters, we also added CDTs now support document data types. So a lot of you might have been creating CDTs that need to reference documents. And of course, the best practice before 18.3 was to define those as an integer field. The integer field, of course, as I map that to a relational database, would persist the document ID inside the relational database. Now when defining a CDT, you can directly reference a document object or a document type as specific fields. Now, how does this work in a database mapping? We're still going to map that as an integer field inside of the relational database. So it will be backwards compatible. Say if I already have integers inside my database, it will be backwards compatible to know that those are document IDs. There's no other information stored in there as I store it as a document. But there is a little bit of benefit here that as objects need to reference that specific CDT field, it will know that it is a document type, which means that I probably don't need to apply the toDocument function. I don't need to, say, cast that integer now to a document to convert to document type. Appian will be natively aware that, hey, this is a document. I know how to then pass that inside my parameters of other functions that require a document. And speaking of one of those, let's talk about a new one, which is the ability to send documents with base64 in line with JSON or XML. So what this specifically is that as I'm defining a JSON string, in this example, we'll go into this more details also in my interface or integration designer, but as I need to pass specific data inside the JSON string, it will automatically recognize if a field or rule input is of document type. So here I just said RA-bang document, which happens to be one of my rule inputs right here. It will recognize that that field, if it's in a data type as well, is a document type and automatically cast that to a base64 string. So you do not need to download the plugin to convert to base64. We will automatically do a base64 conversion by recognizing document objects when it's inline in JSON or XML and casting it to a base64 string. Let's go ahead and see this in action and put a few things together here. So my specific demo is a specific service that requires you to send documents in base64 inline in JSON, and that service is called DocuSign. You might have used this before. DocuSign is one of the most popular platforms for digital signature capture of, say, like PDF documents or contracts. And in this case, I set up a connected systems template to authenticate with DocuSign. So here I have a OAuth credential set up to work with a DocuSign platform, and there's my client ID and client secret. So again, if you haven't explored connected systems yet, go back and refer to the 17.3 release when we introduced this feature, and of course it's been upgraded since. A lot of significant updates to connected systems in the 18.2 feature as well. And then next, I want to do a few actions here. So I know just the nature of how DocuSign works. The first thing I need to do is I need to get an envelope ID. So I'm going to call this existing web service here to go ahead and get an envelope ID and run that test. This is just going to give it my account and template ID information using that OAuth 2 credentials. And let's go ahead and refresh this, wake up that connection. Let's go ahead and refresh the screen real quickly. Hit test request again. There we go. All right. And it's returned right here, the envelope ID. So my envelope ID value, which is what I need for the next transaction. This is just how DocuSign works, nothing to do with Appian here. So if I go into my example now I need to send, with the envelope ID, I want to ask DocuSign to essentially send a PDF document, require signature on it using this envelope ID. So again, I'm going to pass it this document. I have this document called important document.pdf. And important document.pdf is going to send to DocuSign an array of document objects. That array of document objects, of course, is going to be each document ID. In this case, just that one document. And then here I'm going to cast that RA-bang document to the and cast that to base64 to DocuSign. Hit test, see how that result's going to work. And there we go. So here I've sent my document. This is the request information, but I want to see the HTTP request. And here I can see now the document base64 parameter. And this is just one thing to note, that we don't actually show you the base64 string here. So because it's essentially a gigantic block of gobbledygook that's, looks something like this, but probably 100 times longer, because this is 181.23 kilobytes of basically text string, which is a base64 conversion. So, but to be clear now, we've actually sent that document to DocuSign. It's available now to that environment in a base64 string, and of course, ready for signature from that environment. So one question we often get around this is, hey, can I receive base64 documents? And just go back to the PowerPoint here. To reiterate, this is for sending documents only right now. So I can send documents with base64. If you saw 18.2 as well, we added some other features such as sending documents in binary format as well. So I can push content as document type, as well as multi-part form data. You can have multiple data submitted, say multiple JSON combined with a document. Lots of different ways to send content right now, but we haven't quite released the receiving content yet in the integration designer. If you detect a theme here again, stay tuned to later releases for updates around that. And of course, you can also, inside the integration designer, auto-convert integration objects or CDT to JSON or XML. So in the request body, if I need to, say, automatically convert a result set to XML or JSON, it's going to detect the content type right here when I set the content type. Here I'm going to receive a array of data or a data dictionary, which is my customer information. Now, if I want to convert that to XML, simply check this box. It's going to do a toXML function, and there I have my XML output right here. So no need to apply the toJSON or toXML function. I just check that box. It will automatically convert that CDT, data dictionary, or any list. It will automatically convert that to the proper format type for that target. And finally, we introduce a export process report to Excel capabilities. So this simply allows you to easily take a process report, package it up in Microsoft Excel or CSV, and send it to someone via a smart service action. So if you want to see this in action, let's go ahead back to my environment. I'm going to go back to Tempo here. And from Tempo, I added a little action where you might want to use something like this. So here I see a list of my service requests. I can see all my service requests right here. I can page through them, see all the information. And the very top-hand screen here, I actually added, you can see a little action there. It's a link control. That link control kicks into a start process link. That start process link is going to initiate that process I have to basically send that content. So let's go ahead and try this. I'm going to email myself here. So I have a little user picker on the start form. Hit submit. It's going to take me right back to my service request page. And that's going to fire off a process inside Appian. If we take a look at that, go to monitoring. Here we go. It's kicking off that little process. It's going to run that report twice. It's going to run it, package up for Excel once, package up for CSV once, and then send it off to me. And if I want to see that report information, I actually just sent it to myself right here. There it is. We'll go ahead and check it out. And there's my CSV document as well as my Excel document, which is those 39 task objects nicely laid out for me in an export report. So again, you can apply this to any process report in the entire system. To configure this, simply go on, double click on it. You'll notice that's going to take some simple parameters. It's going to take a report parameter, obviously, which is going to be the target report I want to send. Filters is going to rely on you to use the query filter function to define a specific filter set. The report context, so which process model I want to point it to, as well as the new document name I want to generate, the folder I want to save it in. And more interestingly as well, you can obviously use this to update an existing document. So if I regularly refresh maybe a report in the Appian system, I can simply create a new version of that. And if I have a template, I want to have like a nicer header or style, I want to package it up to an existing kind of executive report in Excel, I can define a custom cell position to insert that in a specific sheet number or cell position inside the overall Excel document. So you can really get granular of where I actually insert this data inside the environment. And similar with CSV, oftentimes I want to package up information, send it to a data warehouse, for example. The CSV also allows me to define a custom delimiter, which could be a caret, comma, pipe, whatever your maybe warehouse or target system requires. I can easily configure that to common CSV delimiters inside the environment. Other than that, it works the exact same way as the Excel export. So going back, that was all the designer features for Appian 18.3. Now let's talk about the administrator features. First, we now have a Manage Trusted Certificates console inside the admin console. So this specifically is for HTTPS communication. So when I have a specific encrypted certificate requirement, and maybe a TLS encryption talking to an external integration, And that needs to be managed. The certificate needs to be managed myself. So typically, you go to a HBS secured website, they send the certificate with that website request, so I don't need to manage it. But sometimes you have unsigned certificates where it's not necessarily, it's going to be managed in my own web browser or on my client communication. So this specifically applies to integration designer object. Whenever the integration designer requires HBS communication and I don't have that certificate already available to me from that signed source, I can then manage those trusted certificates inside the admin console. It'll automatically identify by the URL string which certificate to use. So if I want to talk to star.badssl.com, it'll recognize that the URL string from the integration object is correlated to this URL in the certificate, find the right certificate to use, and set up that authentication. So the designer doesn't need to do any extra work to define which certificate to use for every single integration they want to perform. In addition, on top of the groups and group type features we talked about early in Designer, we've also added a new logging capability to add more insights in the usage of groups. This is specifically helpful if I have processes that generate groups automatically. So this allows me to measure exactly how many groups are being created, number of group types, number of groups, custom groups, department groups, team groups, different types of groups with rules. All those now can be easily tracked from the log files in the Appian server. And also we allow you to search now users by UUID inside the admin console. This is useful because sometimes when I apply import-export logs, it might reference a specific user's UUID, but maybe not show the name of the person. So now I can simply type in the UUID inside that search string. It'll find the proper user inside the environment to identify which user maybe a specific log was referring to. Next, we have faster Appian updates. Specifically, when you upgrade to Appian 18.3, you're going to notice that it's a much faster upgrade. The first part of that is overall time, faster application server time has been improved by 10 to 30 minutes. In addition, we don't rebuild the analytics engine anymore on an update. So this is also going to save possibly an additional 30 minutes. So you should expect maybe a 10 to 60 minute improvement in the upgrade process from 18.2 to 18.3. And this is such a valuable feature, we actually hotfix this back to 18.1 and 18.2. So if you just simply want to upgrade to 18.2 or 18.1 from say 17.4 or earlier, you'll notice these also improvements that it's going to be a much faster upgrade process. And finally, probably most significant architectural change with Appian in a while is that we no longer require an application server. So pretty much all of our on-premise customers, you might be familiar with your environment, is running on either JBoss or Oracle WebLogic server. So those are no longer required nor recommended. Appian now operates exclusively on the Tomcat server with the Java servlet container. Tomcat is included and pre-configured with Appian, so there's no need to license Oracle WebLogic server, directly saving you money, or JBoss Enterprise Edition. And as well, since it's packaged and pre-configured, you don't need to worry about configuring it as well. Much faster installation, as well. Appian fully supports all support on the Tomcat platform via Appian support if you have any questions, configurations on that environment. So if you are familiar though with application servers, you might be familiar with the fact that, well, JBoss actually does include a Java servlet container. WebLogic includes a Java servlet container. Yes, you can still run Appian on JBoss and Oracle WebLogic server. That is still supported, but not recommended. The reason for that, again, is you need to configure it at a very low level. So you need to go in and actually configure the JBoss server and WebLogic server to work properly with Appian. The Tomcat environment is pre-configured for you, so much simpler. When you run WebLogic server and JBoss as well, you're running a lot more CPU and memory intensive application server than is even necessary to run the Appian environment. So Appian's much lighter now, running on the Java servlet container. If you're running JBoss or WebLogic server, you're really just wasting memory and CPU resources on those app servers. And of course, we still support things like high availability configurations, distributed environments, all that is still supported on Apache Tomcat. When Appian 18.3 is released on August 24th next week, I encourage you to check out the documentation. We'll certainly be updating lots of docs on the Tomcat support and how this works, as well as architectural guides applying this for maybe distributed app servers or high availability environments as well. Of course, this was the Appian 18.3 product announcement webinar. Thank you all for attending. And again, if you have additional questions, feel free to post those to community.appian.com. We'll always be looking at that, And look forward to the Appian 18.3 release on August 24th, next Friday, as well as look forward to the 18.4 release, and our next product webinar should be around that late October, early November timeframe. So till then, have a great time and enjoy the 18.3 release. Thank you, everyone.